Welcome to another edition of the Heavy Duty Parts Report. My name is Jamie Irvin, and today we are live. With all of our live broadcasts, we'd love to have you participate in the conversation. So if you would like to make a comment or ask a question, please do so. We'll do our best to incorporate you into the conversation. Try to do that early on in the show, as sometimes people comment right at the end just as we're signing off. So try to get in there early. Also, make sure you head over to heavydutypartsreport.com. Check out our weekly podcast that drops every Monday. We're interviewing heavy duty parts specialists and industry experts, learning about how to save fleets money. So head over to heavydutypartsreport.com. Check out the episodes and please subscribe. Today, I am excited to have a guest on that's going to help us to kind of figure out something that's pretty important for the future of the heavy duty parts business. And we're going to talk about 5 things you need to know to sell parts online. So I invited Sam Gupta to join us today. Sam has intimate knowledge of what goes into setting up an e-commerce platform, but what goes beyond just the e-commerce platform. What's all the things that sit in behind of that to make this thing actually work and to be able to empower people to sell parts online through a digital sales channel. So, Sam, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Jimmy. And I am a big fan of your show, and I am super excited to talk to your fun listeners.
Well, thank you very much. I always appreciate having fans. That's wonderful. But I'd like to talk about the knowledge that you have, because this is a subject that I've tried to raise awareness of, and of course, COVID made a big push in our industry towards digital. People who were very hesitant prior to the pandemic were physically forced to think more about how to integrate digital into their business model. And so I am seeing quite a large swell of companies who are really investing in e-commerce platforms, digital sales channel. And I did a poll recently. You might have seen it on LinkedIn. 65% of respondents are now buying parts on some e-commerce site,
Yeah.
which was a much higher number than I expected, and was higher certainly than what the reality was just maybe 18 months ago. Have you seen that kind of move in the work that you're doing with companies, whether it's in trucking or other industries?
Well, so there is definitely a move, and I go back to talking about the changed habits overall, the way we shop. Right. So if you talk about your customers in the trucking industry, your customers are going to be, people like fleet managers or the technicians So now if they are buying the home goods for their own personal use online, and they are noticing the difference in the experience, now if they come to work, they probably would like the same experience. Okay. So
Yeah.
and initially, I mean, see, if you go like 20, 30 years back, even for our home stuff, we used to call, like we used to visit store. But now we like to be slightly more researched. We don't, I don't know if we can trust everything at the face value, because you have been in the sales community for a long time, Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
You know how this works, right? So sometimes it's just hard to trust. We all want facts. We want facts in a public forum, in the online forum. And that's what is, I think, enabling the whole movement towards digital. You have far more trust there.
So as a consultant who's been working in the heavy duty industry now for a couple of years, and my background goes back to 1998 in this industry, but over the last couple of years, as I've worked with companies, I've been approached by many companies who say, we want to create a digital sales channel. We see other e-commerce companies. We of course have seen the enormous success of Amazon and how they're the most dominant company in the world.
Yeah.
We're a little scared of the future. We know we need to do something. So we've decided to go and set up an e-commerce store. What's below the surface that most people don't see? Because because you go to someone's website
Yeah.
and you can buy some parts online, there's a lot more to the story than just that. So, I like to use that iceberg analogy, right? What you see above the surface of the water is a very
Yeah.
small percentage of what's actually going on under the surface. So can you kind of peel that back for us and show us what's going on under the surface that people don't see when they see an e-commerce platform online?
Right. By the way, I love that analogy, and I am going to talk more from the practical sense of how e-commerce platforms are laid out. So let's compare some of the common ones. You look at Google, okay? If you actually look at the Google website, the only thing it has is one page, okay? It doesn't
Mhm.
have anything else. But look at the kind of things Google can accomplish for you and the amount of investment that Google has made. Software or the e-commerce platforms always have had this invisibility problem. But unless you understand what goes underneath, you will not be able to appreciate or embrace how powerful the digital capabilities could be. Now let's talk about a traditional, heavy parts distributor versus Amazon website. Now, if a person who does not have as much digital or e-commerce experience, they go to Amazon versus they compare a distributor site, they are going to say it's similar. You have similar number of fields, you have similar number of the search criteria may be slightly more robust on Amazon, but you are not seeing the $1 trillion investment that is happening behind the scene in Amazon to enable the experience that you get on a daily basis. And that experience speaks for the volume. Okay, it is going to be related to the trust. When you go to Amazon, you don't even have to go to Google anymore. If you go to Google, you don't really get the same quality search that you can get from your Amazon. If you go to Amazon, you can quickly compare, contrast. You can compare the reviews. You can check the reviews. Amazon is going to have some of the verified reviews. If you order, Amazon provides some sort of guarantee as well that you are going to get this part at this time. You are going to be updated all the time. Now let's
and
talk
and
about.
and let's just add Mike's comment to the conversation here. Hello, Mike. Thanks so much for commenting, my friend. He talks about the workforce transition to the millennials being the majority workforce, and then those workers are familiar. They've been raised with they're called digital natives because they've been raised with the internet. They've been raised with social media. They're used to doing things in a certain way using
Yeah.
digital tools. When they start to take senior leadership roles, their expectation as a buyer is to have this great experience. And so I think Mike is what he's saying here is that it's so important for companies to understand where the buying behavior is going. This is
Yeah.
what's driving the need for the digital. And what you're saying is that people don't see the massive investment that goes almost unseen under the surface.
Exactly. And I am the best proxy as the millennial because I am a millennial. And if I compare the people of, my circle, we don't like to talk over the phone, even if there is an option, even if it is going to be easy, just because it's a frightening experience for millennial like us. Okay. For us, we would rather text. We would rather
Mhm.
message you on LinkedIn. We would rather, message on the text. We would rather email. I mean, that's our way of doing business. We are not very phone savvy people. So you are absolutely right. Things are going to change as more millennials and Gen Zs are going to be in the workforce. They are very TikToky, is the term that I like to utilize. The way they behave and act. So once they are in the force, obviously the phone model is probably not going to be as relevant. It will still be there.
Before the pandemic, 49% of heavy duty parts were purchased with a phone call. 49%.
Yeah, yeah.
That number is just going to go down and down and down as this becomes more and more prevalent in our industry. So you've talked about the massive investments behind the scenes with like Amazon.
Yeah.
How do companies get their heads around what actually is needed to make, let's say, the back end systems, the things that go unseen by the public? Like, what's all involved? Break it down for us.
Yeah, so let's talk about again the preparation for the physical channel, and I think your audience may be able to relate with that a bit better. So let's say if you are opening a store at a location, you are opening a distribution location. There's going to be a number of steps that you are going to take. The
Right. So
planning.
you got to get the retail location, you got to get the sign put up, you've got to get the inventory and the shelving and the parts counter and the phone lines installed. Like that's all involved in setting up a traditional retail store.
But let's talk about the experience. The most important piece of that part is going to be the only reason why you are able to compete with the larger distributors is going to be your subject matter expertise. The only reason why technicians come to you is number one is going to be your trust. Number two is probably going to be relationship. But number three is going to be they get their questions answered. Okay.
Right.
If you go to Walmart, I mean, there's literally nobody. I mean, you are not going to find anybody there who can answer your questions. So now let's talk about the preparation that we were talking about in the physical. So 50% of the, the service business or the technician businesses or the repair shops or the distributors, if you look at their website, they are probably going to have 4 pages. Now, when you compare this with the physical world, let's say if you were opening a store, Jamie, and the only thing you had is the banner or a board, and it had just the phone number or the email address, how would your experience be? Sure, you can call, but you cannot go and touch the product. You cannot
Mhm.
really get your questions answered. You are going to have a million questions that this is the truck I'm trying to repair. Okay, this is the part I'm looking for. Is it going to be authentic or not? Is it going to be, is my truck going to break in between? So you are going to have all of those questions if you are buying, let's say, the part for the first time.
So it's
So
kind of like putting up a banner with your phone number and email and having like the store is not there. It's just like an empty parking lot and you have no
exactly.
way. You can look at the banner, but you can't get to the store.
Right, what's the point of doing? Sure, I mean, you can probably, that provides a slightly more localized location, but it doesn't really serve any purpose. Now let's
And
talk
that
about.
what you're talking about is the more informational type websites that were uh, kind of the gold standard 15 years ago.
Exactly. And by the way, it doesn't answer the questions that people are going to have. It's going to
Mhm.
say, we are the best service repair shop here.
Yeah,
Everybody's going to say that. So what's the point? I mean, if everybody's best, nobody's best, in my opinion, right?
right.
So you need to be answering the questions that people are looking for when they come to the store and mimic that experience that you are going to have in the physical world, because your competition is the physical world. Okay, because their choice is going to be, shall I make a phone call and just walk to the store, talk to a rep? This is going to be easy. Am I going to be investing more time? Because if you look at these technicians, they are super busy. They have a lot of challenges in meeting the expectations of the customer. If they don't prepare it timely, their customers are going to fire them and find somebody else. So it's a different ball game from their perspective. So their problems are always going to be, number one, time is the big factor. Trust is the second factor. Number third is going to be the subject matter expertise that they are going to get by walking to the store. Now, if you have to replace this experience in the digital world, so the easiest way could be at least try to answer the questions in the public forum. And we were discussing this, Jamie, in the pre-show. There are companies, what they have done is, hey, if you come to my website, you have to log in. Now that is a
Mhm.
friction in the digital experience. If I'm actually trying to repair my truck right now, and if you are going to ask me to enter the password on my phone, it's slightly more inconvenient, as I may have grease in my hands. I may be
Yeah,
repairing, and so think of the person who is actually on the field, who's sweating. You have to think about that person. Those are
that's
the
right.
people who matter. They are your customers. So how can you enable the experience that is going to be beneficial for them from their perspective? If you think
So
about that.
Mike here has just commented. He says, "Be the subject matter expert via e-commerce." Wow, big task. Mike gets it. It's not an easy thing to accomplish. There's a lot of work that goes into being able to accomplish that. But to your point, if you're not thinking about it from that perspective of the user's experience, you're never going to get there.
Exactly. But with that comment, what blows my mind is, let's say if you are getting the same question 5,000 times in a month,
Yeah.
you are answering the same question, okay, for these customers. Look at the amount of effort is involved in that customer service. There is a real dollar,
Yes.
involved in that. Now you are comparing that with e-commerce. Obviously, e-commerce is going to require some effort. I mean, there's nothing free in this world. But what that creates is going to be the repeatable, scalable processes and business model. Once you
Mhm.
put your answers one time on your e-commerce site and enable, that's going to live there forever. Obviously, you need to update. I'm not saying that, e-commerce site you create today, once and done, we are all good. It doesn't work that way. But you are going to have far more repeatability, far more scalability, than your physical model. And by the way, the if you talk about the customer experience as well in the physical world, it is always dependent upon the reps. Some reps are going to be really good, some reps are not going to be as good. So sometimes your customers will get good experience, sometimes they are not going to get, sometimes you're going to get lose account just because they did not get the rep they were looking for. So
Yeah.
it's very, 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 very inconsistent customer experience. But in case of e-commerce, you can bring
Just
on.
before you move forward, one thing that's coming to mind on that is, so let's say that you, like you said, you're answering those same questions over and over again. There's a human cost to doing that on the phone, at the parts counter.
Yeah,
Um, you all, you take a picture of the product,
yeah,
you upload that, you get all the information related to weight, size, the pies information, you upload that, you record a video answering the three most common questions about that part, you upload that. Now it's there, and anybody, for as long as that part is being sold, they can access that information. You've done it once. So it is an investment, but it's just a reallocation of assets that you've been using traditionally. So I think so far we've talked about 5 things you need to know. One, the e-commerce site that people see up front is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more underneath. Two, the user experience has to be designed with the person who's going to be buying on that site in mind, the repair technician,
yeah,
the person who's fixing the truck. Three, the investment going into your e-commerce, or let's just call it a digital sales channel, is not a net new investment. It's a reallocation
yeah.
of investment you're making that is almost invisible because it's just happening day after day after day, and you're not really accounting for it. So this is important for people to understand.
Exactly. And just one comment I would make there is, when you are trying to change people's habits, okay, you really need to take baby steps. If you are not going to take baby steps, it's going to come across as very, with a lot of friction. So let's say if you have your customer service reps, and I think, Chris from Gen Alpha, you have had her on this
Mhm.
show, and she talks about this a lot, to be honest. Okay. So when you are trying to change the behavior, you have to show them what all is possible. You can't them to take action just yet. You are not going to put this content on your website and you expect them, okay, these guys are going to show up and they are going to actually start eating by themselves. It doesn't work that way. If they have always been sort of fed by somebody else, you have to take baby steps. So here, in this particular case, what you could do is you can ask your customer service reps, whenever you get a call, give them a little demo of the what is possible in case of e-commerce. Do the job first, show them how easy it is, okay,
Mhm.
and then tell that, hey, when you call, sometimes I may not be here, it's probably going to take 2 hours to get hold of me to find the answers. You can probably do it yourself, but I mean, if you ever need, you can always call me, I'm not going anywhere. So that's how you reduce the friction in the buying process. That I am, and we all like to be sort of independent, we like to research ourselves, we don't want to bother people in general. I mean, that's the human behavior, right? If they figure out that, okay, I can probably do this myself, right? If I'm stuck, I always have the person to call, I'm actually going to try to do it myself. So that's how you reduce the friction in the buying process, and that's how you take the baby steps in your digital sales and in the e-commerce journey.
Right. So number 4, take your time, don't rush this process, and educate your customers. And there's a real upside to that as well. If you make a bunch of decisions and go all in, and then you show it to your customers and they go, I don't really like the way you did that, it's not really that user friendly, like you know how to do it, but for me it was very difficult, and now
Yeah,
all of a sudden you got to start all over again. So why not get your customers involved in the process of
exactly.
building your digital sales channel? So number 4, take baby steps, do a crawl, walk, run approach, and get your customers involved. That's awesome. Let's finish our conversation today by talking a little bit more about your expertise on the back end systems, because I think that's number 5.
Yeah,
Is that it's one thing to get your commercial your e-commerce platform set up on your website. It's another thing to integrate it with your ERP, with your accounting software,
yeah.
with the offline systems of how to physically accept the order and then ship it out. So how do you integrate all of that? That's the 5th thing I want to talk about.
Yeah, so I think there is also going to be baby steps in that process. If you have never been sort of the digital business, you can't be digital business overnight. You have to take baby steps. So one of the things that you need to figure out is how you can create that thin slice for your digital channel and what you can afford from your IT investment perspective, digital investment perspective. But you should actually lay down your plan on the piece of paper. It's always going to be far easier to discuss something on the piece of paper, because when you are the manual ad hoc business, your business is not going to be as standardized in general.
Right.
The digital systems, the way they work is they require a little bit of standardization. If your business is not going to be standardized, then you are going to see a lot of cracks on your roof, and then you are going to complain that, you know what, digital systems don't work. So digital systems or the architecture is designed to teach you the best practices of how to run a scalable business, right? So in case of, let's say, if you are a very small business, let's say you have QuickBooks, you have the e-commerce platform, and then you have a bit of the warehouse management system in between. So one thing you need to figure out is, okay, if I have three systems in between, how are they going to be talking to each other? Who is going to be responsible for what activity? What kind of data elements are going to be exchanged in each of those? How are your organizations going to be collaborating with each other as they go through that order to cash transaction, okay, as they go through that procure to pay transaction, okay? So that's the model that you need to build. So today, let's say if you start your journey on the ERP, you are going to be buying really small system. You don't want to go for like really expensive system because you don't have IT capabilities. So first system when you buy, I mean, most likely it's not going to be perfect. Okay, it's going to be super imperfect. Okay, so that's going to be your learning process because you have standardized something. But once you start learning, you have to keep building on that. How you can take baby steps inside the system as you learn about your customers, how they are behaving. Because as you learn from them, their behaviors need to be incorporated in your digital system and in your digital process. Okay, so there is no sort of magic formula to create the system overnight. It doesn't work that way. Okay, you need to take baby steps. Is how I like to define. I don't know, I can go far deeper in that, depending upon how deep you want to get.
No, I think that's important to for us to kind of stop there, because we've given people a lot of different things to think about, and what I'm hoping people will see is that in order to make this transition, you need good partners. You need knowledgeable people who have the expertise to help guide you so that you can take that crawl, walk, run approach, and you can scale this over time, and that you can be successful. So what I want to do is let's talk about what's the best way of connecting with you, Sam. Is it LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is going to be the best. I'm
Great.
super popular on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter. Sam Gupta, WBS Rocks, Elevate IQ,
Okay.
WBS ROCKS, ELEVAT IQ. Both have
We'll
.com
we'll
domain.
put links. We'll add links to this, no problem. So there will be links in the show notes to Sam. You can get to him, see what he is up to there. Now, Sam is an expert on this ERP side, the back end systems. He's got a lot of partnerships, and he is definitely a resource that you can use. I'm working on the consulting side on this as well. So make sure that you reach out to us if you want to take your company to the next level. We would be able to help you with that. And Mike, thanks so much for being part of the conversation. It was a great conversation because you were part of it and you contributed. Thank you so much. And we will talk to you very soon, Mike. I hope that you comment on one of our future videos. Sam, I just really appreciate you taking a bit of time out of your day to talk to us about these 5 important things. I think that everyone needs to be thinking about this because times they are a changing.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the show.
All right, sir. We'll talk to you later. So that brings to the conclusion another episode of the Heavy Duty Parts Report. We will be back next week with another live at 10 a.m. One thing I wanted to just talk about quickly is that up until recently, you had to go to YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn to watch these. You can still do that, of course, but we've now incorporated the live broadcast directly on heavydutypartsreport.com. Right now, it's on the homepage in the live presentation section. So if you go to the homepage and scroll down, it's there. We're going to be also adding it very soon to the live presentation tab. And so you will be able to find it directly on our site. Try to make it as easy for you as possible. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.